March 25th, Addison Central School District Board meeting to order. The current time is 6:30. At this time, I would like to do introductions, and I'm going to start with Jamie.
Jamie McCallum. Ryan Barlow.
Jason Chan.
Steve Orzek.
Mary Heather Noble.
Laura Hartman.
Chip Malcolm.
Ellen Wheelan-Weist.
Trisha Allen.
Barbara Wilson.
Tim Williams.
Joanna Doria.
Pat Parenti, Director of Finance and Operations.
And for Central Office Administrative Staff.
Going back to me.
Yep.
Nicole Carter, Assistant Superintendent, Equity and Student Services.
Laura Nugent, Director of Special Education. Courtney Cron, Director of Teaching and Learning.
Is that, we got everyone. Thank you so much. At this time on our agenda is our public comment period on agenda items. If in fact you would like to comment on agenda items, please raise your hand and we will bring folks in. Was there anyone on Zoom? I'm sorry. I am so sorry, guys, because Ellie's not here and she might have been on Zoom and I didn't introduce her. I don't see her, right? Okay, cool. Thank you. Sorry, guys. Sorry. I just all of a sudden had a brain thing and said, oh no. So if in fact you would like to make a public comment on an agenda item, please raise your hand and we will I'll call on you. Limit it for 3 minutes. If in fact you're on Zoom, please raise your Zoom hand. Anyone would like to make a comment on an agenda item? There's Ellie. Yay. Anyone on Zoom?
Oh, we have a public comment.
Oh, okay.
I was trying to make sure nobody else wanted to.
Okay.
My name is Mary Slozar, Weybridge. I just wanted to raise, I hope that the board and administration in the conversation of, context of Nicole's presentation will engage in a meaningful conversation about how we are hiring and how we're retaining staff. Clearly we have staffing shortages, but some districts are able to hire, some districts are able to retain more staff. So are we learning from the process of resignations? What are we doing to keep people? How can we creatively solve this problem? That's it, thanks.
Okay. And could we, sorry, Matt, could we check and see if there's anyone on the, if there's anyone on Zoom that would like to make a public comment on agenda item, please raise your Zoom hand. Okay, seeing none, we will continue. The next item is approval of the minutes of March 11th, 2024. First, can I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
A second.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor of approving the minutes of March 11th, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by saying nay? Any abstentions? The minutes have been approved. Thank you. Next up is our ACSD bills, approving those. And even though we haven't finished our reorganization of our committees, I'm going to ask Chip to lead us in this discussion since they've been continuing to review the bills despite us not quite have finished the reorg yet.
Well, I didn't think anybody else was going to rush in to do it, so.
Thank you, Chip.
First is a payroll warrant of, and these were read on the 18th of March. Jason and I read them. First is a payroll warrant of $702,130.37. And the second is the general fund warrant for $549,782.66. where a gross number of that 549 is about 200,000 are payments out to preschool operators or others, the third of 4 payments. So, and I move that we accept the bills as described and pay them.
A second?
I second.
Okay, thank you, Suzanne. Any discussion, any questions? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor of approving the bills, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by saying nay? Any abstentions? Okay, the bills have been approved. Moving right along, our next agenda item is report of our student representatives. Eddie is not able to join us tonight, but Sophia is, so I'm going to turn it over to her.
Okay, so this week is neurodiversity week, like our celebration week, which is really exciting. We're having t-shirts ordered this week. And we're just bringing awareness, I think, to it, that is around. And some students have addressed some concerns relating to new dress code, particularly the female population of the student body. Just, I don't really know much to say about it other than, because I don't wanna be the person to, yeah. I don't wanna. The next thing is, it has been brought to the attention of the student council administration that male students would like to see barriers or doors installed in various bathrooms throughout the building. Most significantly, the bathrooms across from the guidance offices on the first floor. I have seen this. There are no bathroom doors on the first floor. The first floor's bathrooms do not have doors on the outside. They're just kind of out there. It is an issue that I think should be. And lastly, I just do want to say thank you to anybody who did attend Hope Happens Here Trivia Night. It was a huge success, and there was a big turnout, and there are pictures out on our Instagram. So,
Excellent.
thank you.
Any questions for Sophia? Thank you so much for your report. Moving on, we have the report of the superintendent, so I'll turn it over to Dr. Williams.
Thank you. Every month I have a written report. I did that last meeting. Tonight, there won't be a written report from the superintendent's report, but tonight we have a presentation on student services that Nicole will be delivering.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Hi, Nicole.
Yeah, what a change.
So, before I get started on this rather lengthy presentation that I've already had so many people reach out to me about, which is wonderful, I just want to name that I was a teacher and I was an administrator, and in the middle I was a clinical social worker. And my training as a clinical social worker is, when there's a hard conversation, you have it. You name the things as gracefully as you can. You allow for a multitude of opinions, and you work together as a community or as a small group or as an individual to try and solve that challenge. And so with that in mind, I created this presentation because I think it's really important to name some things. So there's a lot of naming here. You might see something and think, oh man, she got that wrong. Totally possible. I'm a human. Or there might be something that you've been waiting to hear the district say, and you'll celebrate. Wonderful. But I want you to know the goal is to help all of us in this room, and anyone who watches this video, understand this small bit of information. It doesn't feel so small. Okay. That being said, ready? Here we go. Gentle reminder for this presentation, and I need to move while I'm talking, so I hope it is not too distracting. As we're having this conversation, it's really important that we remember that all kids want to do well. Every single child in our community wants to do well, and their doing well is always preferable. So when we talk about kids struggling, they don't want to. Number 2, students who struggle with behaviors in school struggle because they're lacking skills. It's a skill deficit. And finally, we help kids by helping them to build skills. That's the work. That being said, that gentle reminder that as we're talking about kids and the ways they're struggling, to remember they're kids, they want to do well. And we want them to do well. Everyone in this room does. So here's part 1. Oh.
Yeah, I know.
Part 1 is the state of specialized services, 23-24. You've all seen this by now because Dr. Williams shared it in an email. I also brought with me copies for board members to have the paper version because I thought that might be helpful. Do you mind sending them down?
Sure, thank you.
I thought it might be helpful to see them. I don't know if I'll have more for everyone else, so we'll see. Okay, here we go. This great chart, it says so many things, is my attempt to name what specialized services look like in a school district. So, I'm going to walk you through it. This first column on the far left is students who are not receiving specialized services. They're not on an IEP. Currently, that's 80% of the students in ACSD. This is called, in legal terms, the least restrictive setting. General educators, general ed care professionals, and a host of other people provide services here. Down here is residential. So this is the most restrictive you can get in special education. And it's most restrictive. Currently, we have 0% of students receiving specialized services here. So it's most restrictive. And then we have everything in the middle, which ranges from a public or private placement. 3% of ACSD students currently receive that. VAC, Lehigh, Centerpoint, daily transportation is provided. Then moving towards least restrictive, so moving from most to least, we have students who are in the general education environment 0 to 40% of the time, so less than a full day. These students right now, ACSD has about 5% of our students on IEPs are 0 to 40%. Locations include one-on-one spaces in schools, the Wellness and Learning Center at Mary Hogan, the Wellness and Learning Center at MUMS, the Aspire program at MUHS, and ACP Middle and High School. Then you go one more over to a little bit getting towards general education, and you have 40 to 79%. These are also one-on-one spaces. We have about 8% of our students. We have an autism sensory support space in Mary Hogan, the Wellness and Learning Center. And the reason the Wellness and Learning Center and the Aspire program show up both of here is because those are porous programs where students are in getting services in those programs depending on what they need. And then finally you have 84% of ACSD students on special education receive more than 80% of their services in the classroom and only 20% out. So this is what the federal law has set up. This is what Vermont complies with. All of this language, the goal to get to the least restrictive, the staffing we use, what the programs and placements are all defined really tightly by the federal government. I'm gonna keep going. Then we have where we are now. So I've practiced this presentation a couple of times because I really want to do a good job of communicating what it means. So hopefully I'll get it right for you. So same concept, residential down here, general ed down here. Now the reason I want you to show this is coming back to that naming the problem. This is the thing. The thing is, the thing has a lot of red because we have lots of problems we need to solve. If I start down here We have no residential facilities in Vermont. So if a student requires care, where a team has decided that is the best place for the care, they don't get it in Vermont. That's a big deal. No child should be sent out of state. Then we have separate school, public or private. It's currently a 12 to 24 month wait list to send a student to a public or private separate school in the state of Vermont. The need is the most acute K-5, there's nothing. And then 6-12, there are a few programs. Transportation is extremely difficult to obtain, and it costs more or less $100,000 to $150,000 per student, just for the transportation. We currently pay about $600 a day for transportation to the few placements we have at Lehigh, VAC, and Centerpoint. So we've got nothing. We have a 12 to 24 month wait list with upwards of $150,000 in transportation for kids who have the most lagging skills, our most vulnerable students. Then I'm going to move over one more, and here are the students who are in our schools, either 0% of the time but still a part of our school, to up to 80%. I gotta step back so I can read it well to you. Staffing. So it's red because this is where the problem is. We have few to no applicants for critical positions. This includes special educators, SLPs, mental health clinicians, BCBAs, and intensive needs paraeducators. We have an additional challenge to find staff for what we call our Wellness and Learning Center, and ACP, which up until July 1st is the Addison Consortium program, and then the name changes a little. Very difficult to find people to work in those programs. We've also at the same time had drastic reduction in CSAC staffing and services, not because they want to, but because they too are having trouble finding people. So we've got all these things colliding at once in one place. And then space. Space right now is what we can find, where we can find it. It's very limited and it's very uneven, and that impacts what we're able to provide students. Nothing feels like nothing if you have to wait 24 months for something, right? Really hard to staff. Have to beg people sometimes. And here's general education. All of this red, it's like a tsunami, right? It just, or maybe that's not the best analogy, but it pushes on general education, and it impacts general education, both for students on IEPs and for students not on IEPs. Everybody's impacted here. The lack of staffing and space for specialized services means that there's more to do if you are a classroom teacher, an administrator, a paraprofessional, or a school counselor, because federal law sort of forces us to prioritize this. So we have to make sure this happens, and that puts all that pressure here. Am I making sense so far? Mm-hmm. Okay, keep going. So this line right in the middle, current problem solving and opportunities for solutions. So what we're currently doing, I'm going to stand back here so I can read it with you, is when possible we have virtual services, so we're able to hire people for a screen. You can imagine why that's not anyone's first choice. We have identified local school capacities. We have prioritized the most intensive needs. We've shifted our staffing patterns so that the most highly trained provide the most needed services. We're problem solving with CSAC and our contracted service providers. CSAC has come up with a whole new model for next year in an effort to support us. I mean, they've really been trying to crack this nut. We're continuing to build our MTSS. We're trying to train staff and provide PD, and we're partnering with Mount Abe and Addison Northwest. And that's really important, I mean, they're all important, but that last one's really important because Tim and I met with them, and we talked about this presentation, and they were okay with me saying, this is not just an ACSD thing. In fact, when we went over what we have, they are in the same amount of pain as we are. They're feeling it in the same way. And they want you all to know, yes, the whole county. And so we're trying to work with them in a new way. We also, so much information. So, we've started building these things called wellness and learning centers. At the high school, it turns out they already had a wellness and a learning center. So we rebranded it the Aspire program. We have rebuilt our Addison Consortium program, which are 2 alternative programs, grades 6 through 12, that we partner with the 2 local school districts with. We've rebuilt them, reinvigorated them to help try and address some of this need. The Vermont superintendents and the special ed directors are working together at the statewide level because this actually isn't even just an Addison County thing. I know you all know this because you read the paper and you know these things. But they're trying to crack the nut. And then while all of this is happening, what we're really trying to do is build skills for kids so that they can go back to here and have the education that we all want them to have. Here's the last part of this chart. So there's lots of questions that we all receive about the Wellness and Learning Center and the ACP. So here's a closer look. This is actually taken straight from the website. If you really want to know about these 2 programs, or actually if you want to know about the ACP program, I put the link here. I recommend you go to the website. As their website says, the purpose of ACP is to engage students to improve their emotional and behavioral responses, offer a flexible pathway with regulation, and it's staffed with a school administrator, a social worker, a special educator, and 2 behavior interventionists. 12 to 16 students. And we have 2 locations. One location is underneath Vermont Sun, remember where the preschool used to be? In that space. And the other one is 46 South Village, the yellow building behind the new pediatric dentist place. So that's ACP. This side is the Wellness and Learning Center. The Wellness and Learning Center is similar. The idea is to reintegrate students into the classroom so they can learn skills. 2.5 staff, special educator, and a BCBA or an LCSW. And we deliberately said either because frankly, while we need both, we can't get both. And so if we get one, we work with those skills, and if we get the other, we work with those skills. So for instance, at Mary Hogan, there's an LCSW, Katri Fenster, and we have a contracted BCBA who comes and also supports. So we're doing the best we can to build these systems. There's a full-time intensive needs para, and some students have additional supports there. There's a one at Mary Hogan, one at Mums, and this is a typo. This should say 5 students. It says 1 student for some reason. It's 5 students. So 5 students at Mary Hogan, only K through 2nd grade right now. Mums, 6th through 8th grade, 5 students, and MUHS, 15 students, 9th through 12th grade. And so this is kind of new. This is like the past year and a half in response to this.
Just want to ask a clarifying question,
Yeah.
Nicole. So you've said wellness center, but it looks to me like you have 3 wellness centers, right?
Yes.
And then the staffing that you've got for the wellness center, is that universal at each of them? It's 2.5 staff at the Mary Hogan location, at the Mums location?
We do the best we can to get as close to that as possible.
That's the goal at every
That is the
wellness
goal.
center?
The goal is that there's a special educator, there's a mental health or behavioral specialist, or a little bit of both, and there's a paraeducator. And then the administrator works really closely.
Okay. I just wasn't sure if that was across all of them, or if that's for each of them.
That's our hope. Yeah.
So if I heard you correctly, when you moved to the wellness, you said that the purpose of that was to integrate students back into the classroom. But is that not also the same goal and aspiration for the ACP program?
Oh, that's a great question. We don't have an ACP elementary program.
Okay, but I mean, an overall goal for any of the
Yeah.
students there.
Absolutely. Always going to the least restrictive. Yes. The difference between the two is the Addison Consortium program is outside of the building and the WLC is inside of the building. Yeah.
Well, the 16 student capacity for the ACP program, that's across 3 districts, so we get 1/4 of that capacity, correct?
Well, it's okay to, the good news is that Addison Central School District will be running the ACP program, and it will be for ACSD students with and if there are any additional spots, there'll be priority tuition from the other 2 school districts. So it will, for all intents and purposes, belong to us. So we will stop sharing it July 1st.
And so today, it's really more like the core, we don't.
Yeah. Yeah.
A
Although the
third.
numbers aren't, yes, right now it's a third, a third, a third. The high school one, I think we have more students than the middle school one. But the idea is to increase capacity.
Right.
I don't know that I can answer your question because you're not on the board. I really want to.
Oh. Sorry.
Write it down. I bet you have it written down. Okay, so let's see. So here's this part, urgent areas of need. Just to be really clear, no residential, a wait list 12 to 24 months with transportation that's very expensive, difficulty finding space, and very few applicants for positions that require specialized skills. So there's an urgent need for staff and space that results in unmet lagging skill development. So you've already got lagging skills, and then we're having trouble meeting them. So these lagging skills, they grow. Unmet lagging skill leads to disruption. Kids don't disrupt because they like it. Behavior is communication, and disruption is a sign that there's a lagging skill and there's a problem for us to solve. And that's our job. And that's true for all of us, even us in this room. We all have lagging skills. Here's the big thing. The disruption from this is leading to lost learning for all students. When we go back, oh, actually I can do it with this one. This wave that's pushing on this is impacting all students. And when the disruption starts to end, that's how we'll know that we're growing the skills. That's our goal, is to solve the problem so that we can build the skills which will lower the disruption and bring us back to a place where everybody can learn and feel good in this environment. So from here, I think I'm going to go into data. Yeah. So what's the connection? Oh yeah, Jamie.
Hi, sorry.
No worries.
This is a good slide. I am wondering, so I have a question. This may be an apples and oranges thing. So in higher ed, we're constantly getting bombarded now with all this stuff about increased absenteeism and all these things that essentially translate into like behavior problems for older kids or younger adults. And I'm sure it's not a direct thing, but like one of the things that the message we constantly get about how to deal with this problem, not necessarily at middle grade or whatever, is that this issue of skill thing is like fairly controversial in what we get. And so the question becomes like, how do you, I don't want to go too into it, but how do you conceptualize what a behavior problem is? How do you know when it's one thing as opposed to, I don't know, something else? And to me, I have certainly lagging skills. I can identify them as an educator sometimes, that happens to me. But I wonder, it just seems overly deterministic. Like what is a skilled child compared to an unskilled one? Like you know what I'm saying? I'm trying to figure out how you talk about this or.
Yeah, I would never say there's I would never say there's an unskilled child.
Right. That's
I
not
would
what
say
I'm-
that students, for a host of reasons, whether they're neurobiological, whether it's neurodivergence, or whether it's experience in their environment, have different skills, some of which are their strengths, and some of which lag behind.
Yeah.
And so when kids are disruptive, those skills that lag behind are the ones that we're trying to help support so they can be successful in school. But it really depends on the child. It's not everyone is the same, right? So it's not about it all happens for the same reason for the same people. People are impacted by nature and nurture in different ways.
Right.
Doesn't look like I answered your question though.
No, my question is I'm sorry, I'm not being clear, I guess.
That's okay.
But I'm just like, for some reason, I can't, like the first sentence you said,
Yeah.
most behavior problems are caused by lack of skill, and the whole time you were talking, I was thinking about that. I'm trying to figure out what am I thinking about, like what doesn't make sense to me.
So this framework that I'm talking about comes from Ross Green, and I could share, there's a long list of lagging skills
Oh,
that
interesting.
he talks about. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for
Yeah.
clarifying.
You actually answered my question because I was thinking about what are the skills that we are that you're trying to quantify, and is sitting quietly during morning meeting a skill, and is that something that we're trying to quantify? So when you have a list in your head of skills that certain grade levels students at grade level should be mastering or becoming proficient in, I guess I'm just curious about that quantification of skills.
Yeah, I'm happy to share where the conceptual framework comes from. It's an attempt to be totally transparent to reduce pathologization, right? So I don't want to stand up here and talk about people's mental health diagnoses. I don't want to talk about their trauma. I don't want to talk about in utero exposure. There are all these impacts on kids. So a way to think about it in a school system is to think about a lagging skill. So for instance, you could have a lagging skill with persistence or distress tolerance or the ability to advocate for yourself. There's so many ways that lagging skills can manifest, and schools have a particular bias towards certain skills, whether or not we agree with them, right? So this idea of sitting quietly, it's a pretty controversial thing about whether that's okay for kids or even adults. And it is something that the environment tends to demand. So if that's something that causes distress in your body, how do we build the skills so that you can cope with your distress tolerance? And at the same time, how do we make sure the environment provides sensory-rich alternatives?
And Ellie has a
Yeah,
question.
in the same vein here, but I'm curious about the word skills and then needs, and if we're looking at needs, because I'm thinking like, a kid comes in and hasn't eaten, and they're hungry, that's not a skill, that's
No.
a need. And
Yes.
are we looking, is what we're looking at incorporating those kind of things in as well?
Yeah, if I were gonna write this over, I would add that part, basic needs. Thank you for naming that. Okay, I'm gonna keep going into data. So the idea is, there's all this, showing you what's happening in terms of staffing and spaces and what we can and can't do right now. And there's also the data that tells the story in a little bit of a different way. And it's a pretty visceral way. So this is only August to March of this year. This is the first year that all ACSD schools have collected behavior data in this way. Administrators came together and we determined minor and major behaviors, and we made agreements to enter them into our systems in the same way so that we could begin to look for patterns.
We don't have these slides in the presentation, right?
No.
Oh. I did not know that. Okay, so this is first year data. Hopefully you'll get them.
Yeah.
This is what helps us identify what we want to pay attention to as we move forward, right? This is the first year, this is the baseline. We want to use it to become curious and not right or wrong, because it's the first year. So this is raising questions, this is helping us identify patterns. And we can use it to begin to identify what the priority is, so that we can then make better decisions as we move forward to support kids. I'm going to actually walk back here because it's easier for me to present. So we collect this data for the first time using EduClimber. So we enter all of our data into PowerSchool, which then feeds it into EduClimber, which is a software program that allows us to look district-wide at the school and be able to target academics, social emotional learning, behavior, attendance, really anything and everything, so that we can get snapshots of what's happening or we can dig deep. This is our first, we're like 5 months into using this. Less than that, Tracy's saying less than that. 3 months into using this. It's taken a lot to get it up and started. And this is what it looks like when you're in it. There are all these different ways to look at kids and groups. There's plans you can look at. You can pick what you want to look at, how well you're doing, and what's going on. So, here we go. 7 months of data. Minor behaviors, major behaviors. These were defined this way because PowerSchool and EduClimber require us to define behaviors. In general, minor behaviors tend to be behaviors that teachers and direct staff are focused on. Major behaviors always go to an administrator. Minor behaviors can too sometimes, so it's not a perfect set of boxes. I hope you can see what they are. Yeah.
Is this like throughout elementary school and high school?
Yeah. K to 12. So, here are all the major and minor. And I'm going to come over here. Sorry, John Flowers. Major behaviors to date total 333. I'm going to go back to that definition. That doesn't mean 333 individual students. It just means 333 incidents. Minor behaviors, 839. This is visceral data. It's hard not to have a feeling, but I don't know what last year was or the year before, so I have to like keep reminding myself. This is just what we know this year. Over here, you have the months. August, September, October, November, January. The most incidents in January, 346. Major and minor. Now, if this were EduClimber, I could double click on that bar and I can go in and I can find out how many were minor, how many were major, where were they happening, how did they happen, who reported them. So all that information's in there. Okay, here's major and minor. For schools that have reported, Mary Hogan, the high school, and MUMS are high fidelity numbers because they've had systems longer for inputting data because of their size and their use of PowerSchool. Shoreham, Ripton, Cornwall, Bridport, and Wayport, and I almost called it Wayport, Bridport. I think it's reliable, but I can't say if it is or not because it's newer to them and they're just beginning to build their systems. So Mary Hogan, in the first 7 months so far, have had a total of 500 major and minor. Middlebury High School, 384, and MUMS, 315. If you look down here, Matt Carente took these numbers and turned them into percentage of enrollment versus percentage of total incidents. This is the total. Here's the high school, MUMS, and Mary Hogan.
Is that the percentage of enrollment across the district, or is it in ratio to itself? I'm trying to understand what that's telling us.
K-12.
Yeah, it's total students in the district, and then the ratio of total incidents in the district next to it.
So Mary Hogan has just under 25% of all students in the district, but somewhere like 40% of the total incidents.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Here's minor and major, minor in blue, major in red, grade level, kindergarten on the far left, 12th grade on the far right.
Do you mind just going back to the prior slide a moment? Thank you.
So this is totally confidential. All student names and numbers have been taken off. EduClimber allows you to identify the students who are struggling the most. It does something called top 20. It does this for every metric. Top 20 students doing well with math, top 20 students struggling with math, top 20 students incidents. So this is K to 12, top 20, and it tops out at 41 incidents over here. And when you're in EduClimber, you can double click on the bar and you can go in and you can learn more about that particular student, and you can look at all the things you need to know because we focus on the whole child. How are they doing academically? How are they doing with their SEL for Panorama? How are they doing with their attendance? You can look at it all so that you can get a holistic view of the student. I wanted to give you an idea of what the top 20 looks like for this year so far. So here's some analysis of the minor incidents. So over here, these match the bars. So disruptive behavior is the first bar, and as these go down, the bars go over. So what's the type? So the most frequent is disruptive behavior. Now I'm going to be I've been being totally honest. I'm going to continue to be totally honest. We have not fully calibrated as administrators what disruptive behavior is, right? So we hope we're all kind of getting it right, but that's our work for this summer, to better calibrate. The first step was just putting the data in and being able to look at it. The second step is calibrating. So disruptive, skipping classes, disrespect, refused requests, and other are the top 5 for minors.
Nicole, will there be calibration for disrespect also? That feels like one that could be broadly interpreted.
Yes. I think really almost all of them. There's a couple that maybe are really clear, like cell phone use, but maybe that might even need it. So where are they happening?
Yes, Steve?
Oh, yeah.
So when you have these categorized, for example, disruptive behavior, is that an administrator's categorization of the incident, or is that the reporting person's categorization of the incident? For example, a classroom teacher or some sort of behavior interventionist might, where does this data come from?
This is when the person who is tasked with putting it into PowerSchool, there's a line that asks to name what kind of behavior it is, and they choose it based on the description on the incident report. Or at least that's my hope of what they're doing.
Okay.
Does that feel true, Jen? Okay. Yeah, Chip.
But you also defined minor incidents as mostly staying in the teacher or other capacity rather than the administrator, correct?
Yeah, but we collect the data and it's the administrators who are responsible for getting it into the system.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, Andy.
For students that are on behavior plans or IEPs or different things, that this is part of their regular presentation, like maybe every day in every class they have a disrespectful behavior and walk out. Is that captured, or are we just, that's like that kid's
It's captured.
thing and it's not?
Yeah, we capture
I'm
it.
thinking just 1 or 2 students could have 100 of these things easily.
But it's still schools, everything else.
Yeah, you're not wrong. So here's where they're happening for minor behaviors. MUHS on the left, 283, like you just said, that doesn't mean it was 283 students, that just means there's 283 incidents. followed closely by Mary Hogan with 280, and then Mums at 234. Yeah.
The slide that you showed a couple of slides ago with the top 20, were those all behaviors, major behaviors?
Oh, great question, all behaviors.
Okay, thank you.
Because when I went in to click them to see what it was gonna be like, I noticed, for instance, a few of them, I was like, oh my God, 39. And then when I clicked in it, I was like, oh, like 40 of that, or 20 of them were minor. Okay. Here's the grades.
Sorry, Nicole, do you mind just going back to the location again? Thank you.
This one?
Yes.
Suzanne.
Not all schools are represented in each of the slides. Is there a reason for that, or?
This is what EduClimber gives me. So if it's in there, it gives me what's in there. You click and I chose all the schools,
Okay.
except for pre-K. Ellen and then,
Okay, Ellen, sorry, I can't see you. I'm walking.
I'm just wondering if if there's anything like this broken down by month?
Mhm.
Okay, great. By location?
Mhm.
Great.
yeah, I'm giving you like big picture, yeah.
And just to follow up on Suzanne's point, have all of our ACSD schools been tracking this, or are we uncertain about that?
All of our ACSD schools administrators committed to tracking it.
Have you seen data from all of our ACSD schools?
There's some data that's missing in this data set. I think. I have to find out.
So it has been requested and not provided, or it has been requested
I think
and it
systems,
hasn't been done?
I think systems are still being built and people are trying to figure out how to get the information into PowerSchool. Mary Hogan Mums in the high school were at a great advantage in doing this because they had already been getting close to doing it.
Okay.
Grades. First grade. And 11th grade is all the way at the far left. So first, 9th, 8th, 10th, and 6th were the top 5 grades. For whom? So PowerSchool, because of state reporting requirements, asks us to give a student's gender. They only give us 2 options for gender. And then for ethnicity, they also give us the categories. And so EduClimber pulls it, and 521 of the incidents were people identified in PowerSchool as male, and 318 were female. Or 318 incidents. And then ethnicity is on the right. Mm-hmm.
Can you go back to the grade slide for a minute, the one before? Is there any, like, does this make sense to you? Or is there some, like, explanation for why this first may be high, then we skip to 9th and 8th? Like, what is, do you have any explanation?
I'm working really hard on not having an explanation right now.
Okay.
Because I wouldn't want to get it wrong. It's too important.
Yeah.
I can tell you there are people in this room who will say parts of this feel right and true from their experience. And they're nodding their heads as I say that, so.
Okay, so I guess my question, I know you don't have data from other years, but like, is this common in K-12 education? This kind of age?
Laura Nugent's nodding her head yes.
All the data that I've seen is consistent with the data I saw in Burlington for years, where they collected it for long stretches.
So here's major incidents. What's the type? On the far left and on the far top of the list is fighting and aggression, 168 incidents across the district in the past 7 months. Followed by dangerous acts. Makes you wonder, what's a dangerous act? That's something we need to calibrate. I could think of 5 different things it could be off the top of my head, but that doesn't mean that's what the administrator defined it as. Threatening behavior, false threat, and drive violation. My guess is drive violation only happens at the high school.
That was my question.
Hopefully. I don't actually know, but I'm 99% sure.
Hopefully.
Having gotten one myself in high school.
Nicole, I'm sorry to ask you to go back a couple slides. Can you go back to the demographic slide before? Do we have anything on race or gender that is along lines of what Matt had created for proportionality? The reason I ask is just because understanding the proportional, especially I'm thinking mostly on race.
Yeah.
And whenever you're talking about discipline,
Yeah.
and especially knowing that there's some highly subjective categories of minor behavior at least, it would be helpful to know if this is proportionate to the student body or where it's disproportionate.
Totally agree. Yes, and we can do it. We can do it with our own math, and EduClimber has the ability to do statistical analysis.
Great.
And it's an important next step. It's essential. Okay. What is the type for major? Where are they happening? Mary Hogan has had 182 incidents, major behavior incidents since the start of the school year. Mums has had 80, MUHS 48, and it goes down.
And just, I'm sure someone here can tell me, how many school days have we had so far?
More than 100, because we had our 100th
I
day.
know we hit 100.
124, but that
124.
doesn't,
You can talk.
there's no March data in that data set.
Right.
So it's not a full 124.
Wait, there is some March data in it. Oh, there's no March data for Mary Hogan. I'm with you now.
There's no
Yeah,
March
Brian.
data.
Can you break out the Mary Hogan into the months?
Yes, I can.
Thank you.
Yeah. It's amazing what you can do with this software. So here we go, major behaviors for grades. Again, we see a pattern with the first grade, both minor and major behaviors. Followed by kindergarten. 2nd, 7th, and 6th. And then major behaviors, again, gendered and ethnicity. You'll see similar patterns, which again, both need statistical analysis. And then when I was doing this and I was here, I was like, so let's look at a couple of these grades just to give you an idea of what you can do. So I chose first grade. And so you can break it down and see what the major behaviors are. So 49 of the incidents in first grade are fighting and aggression, versus 2 are false threats. Fourth grade has 10 dangerous acts, 8 fighting and aggression, all the way down to threatening staff and vandalism. Grade 8, fighting and aggression, bullying, vandalism. And grade 10. Any questions before I move away from the data? Anything you want to see again or have questions about?
Sorry, so we won't have a slide tonight that breaks it down by month, it sounds like, by location?
You will not.
Okay,
No.
got it.
Observation is that this is a short period of time in a specific period of time in our country, if we want to look at it that way. So the more we collect this data over a longer time, the more accurate it's going to be as to lots of different things, not just the breakout. But so we can make a lot of different judgments on this, but this is a really small picture. Distressing, but small. So it'd be great when you have 2 full years or 4 full years.
be able to do that.
Mary Heather.
I'm wondering, Nicole, if there have been other data collection efforts in our neighboring districts and whether you'll have had conversations about relative incident frequencies, either even just within Addison County or beyond?
That's a great question. We talk all the time about all 3 districts experiencing similar levels of stress for students and staff, but we haven't compared our data. Addison Northwest does use EduClimber, so that could be something I could definitely work on. I don't know if Mount Abe does, but I'm sure they're collecting data.
Yeah,
So
I'm
yes,
just curious where, I mean, obviously,
that'd be great.
you know, it looks pretty concerning just from this point, but I think comparison and figuring out where we are relative to and contextual information is important as well. And I just want to kind of go on record as requesting these slides be delivered to the full board.
Right.
Yeah.
I
Well,
emailed them.
Okay, and we should include them and put them into
minutes.
the board pack or whatever, so that people have them.
Yeah.
That would be awesome.
Okay, oh wait.
I know these numbers seem high, but just looking at this, I feel like it's likely that this is capturing like not a big percentage of what's really going on. I'm just thinking of my own household with 4 kids in this district, a couple of them that struggle a lot, and I mean, that 8th grade one, my student could have made up all of them, like, and they're clearly like a lot that I think isn't getting in here.
Say again what you mean by there's a lot that isn't getting in here, meaning there's more data to collect?
Underreported a lot, I think, like
I wonder about that too.
the number that's coming to mind is like, this is maybe like 25% of the incidences, if I think about it in relation to my experience. That's just a random number I'm pulling out right now.
Totally.
Well,
Yeah, Jamie.
maybe about that, like, what has to happen for something to show up here? Like, is there, if a child is disruptive in a minor capacity, how does the teacher have to, you know what I'm saying? Like, how does it actually happen?
Yeah, it has to be documented and it has to be submitted to the administration.
Like an official process?
Yeah.
Some form or whatever. Okay. And so to Ellie's point, I guess sometimes it's like, well, there's disruption, but things are busy and we're not gonna, is that possible?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry to ask the obvious question, but okay. So, okay. Okay, thank you.
I'm not sure if this is time for a more like philosophical question, or should I wait till after this next?
There's only one
It's
slide
not,
left.
it's no clarifying, so I'll wait till the end
Okay.
of the slide. It's not clarifying.
Anything else about this before there's one slide left, I believe. And the last slide is going, am I going in the right direction? I feel like I'm not. Sorry, I was clicking the wrong way. The last slide is going back to the beginning. I don't ever want to be in a place where I name problems just to name problems. I think the importance and power of naming problems is then to begin to figure out what do we do. And so this last slide is strategies that we can implement, things that we know will help. So there's what we're doing by building out programs, by finding the most highly trained professionals, by problem solving in CSAC, by building an MTSS system. There's a lot that we're doing, and clearly we need more. And so I just want to invite all of us, what ACSD can do to help strengthen lagging student skills is we need more specialized staffing. We need more community mental and behavioral health supports. There's been a drastic reduction in the past 3 years, just like there's been a drastic reduction in specialized staffing. We need to increase transportation options. So transportation is a true barrier for getting kids to the services that they need. Developing additional program and placement options, right? So that pressure that's being pushed onto general education can be relieved, but not just because we want to relieve general education, but also because we want kids to get the services they need when they need them, so they can build the skills to be successful. We want to continue to problem solve with Addison Northwest and Mount Abe. It's really, it's turning into a really powerful partnership where we're all saying that we're going to do whatever we can to support each other and to identify who has what services and to share. It's a real, I'm only 12 years into this Addison County thing, but from what everybody tells me about the history of Addison County, it feels like a real Addison County moment where we're coming together, the 3 school districts, to figure this out. And then we want to continue our creative CSAT collaboration. Luann and Dave Thompson in particular, I want to give a shout out, are really trying to think outside the box. If they have fewer staff available, what kind of services can they provide to make up for that? And it's really touching how hard they're working to help us.
Go ahead, Joanna.
So I'm trying to reconcile the presentation as a whole, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the slides that were representative of the behavior you're saying is a direct correlation to a lack of skills.
I would never be that concrete in my statement. I'm saying that in general, you can think about it that way.
Okay.
That behavior is communication, and it's communication, and kids want to do well. And
But
they're working hard to do well.
but there's a lack, because the first 3 slides were about skills.
Yeah.
And so I'm just trying to reconcile the whole thing. And then Jamie asked about the skills, and then you talked about how there wasn't, framework from which you were working on the skills.
Yeah, it's a good way to think about it, that kids do well if they can, and that when kids struggle, it's because they need help building a skill, because there's a mismatch happening.
Okay. Is that reconciliation, is that reflection happening? And the other part is, and there's something you said earlier that, I have a real tension with, you don't want to talk about somebody's trauma, you don't want to talk about somebody's disability, but isn't that part of the student?
In this setting, I don't want to.
Okay, but it's.
In this setting.
Okay.
Yeah, in what happens outside of this setting is incredibly nuanced. It's groups of experts coming together and talking about all the things that could be leading to this and trying to figure out how to support the child so that they can do well. Yeah, I'm glad you clarified that because I don't want to talk about it here. When kids struggle in school, there could be a habit of mind to pathologize that struggle, and I don't want to do that. I don't want to talk about bad kids. I don't want to talk about kids who are broken. I want to talk about kids who can do well, who we can help do well.
So first, Alan and then Steve.
Did you have more, Joanna? Were you done?
Just processing.
So the reason I was hoping to see if there was any breakdown by month and location is because I know when Mary Hogan teachers spoke to us a couple of weeks ago, part of what they specifically identified was the need to maintain the student response coordinator position that's been eliminated in our budget for next year. And in January, I feel like we got a micro experiment in when that person and that position was not in the building. And we saw a spike in January overall. So not knowing exactly, I am jumping to an assumption that part of that spike might have been what we heard about experientially by the people in that building. And I'm trying to reconcile the elimination of that position and then understanding that it sounds like we have a lot of unfilled positions, SLPs and special educators and intensive paraeducators. And I know not one doesn't equate the other, but I am really trying to understand the elimination of a position that now feels like it might have been essential, or at least when that position was temporarily relocated, there might have been a significant spike in incidents. And then still saying that we have all these unfilled positions and that's our primary challenge. So I don't know if I have a question other than how do those coexist?
They do coexist.
Right, no, I know that those realities can exist, but I'm trying to think forward to, are we now going to make a bad situation worse? Maybe much, much worse with the elimination of that position in a building that desperately needs it.
So I can tell you, because I went in to look exactly what you're asking. It's not in the slide, but in January, the spike in Mary Hogan was significant. 100% there was a big spike in January. I can't say with any, like, it was absolutely because of this one thing. And I can tell you the data shows there was definitely a big spike in January.
Okay, I mean, yeah, it feels like that was true. So I guess for Tim, for Matt, I guess in general and as the board, we really need to figure out how that spike doesn't become the new normal for Mary Hogan at least. To say nothing of moving forward and wanting all of those numbers to go down.
Yeah.
Steve?
So this information is available in EduClimber, so I think I have a chain of questions here. Who has access to this? Because there are a lot of people, from administrators to board members to teachers to community members, who would be very interested in this data. And EduClimber sounds like it drills too deep to make that data available, because it sounds like you can identify an individual student, which is absolutely not something that we want. Is there any effort to do what you've done, distill this data on a regular basis, and pass that on to the people that are interested? Because there's a lot of people that want this information. You've done a good job, but it kind of feels like we're seeing tip of an iceberg here. I definitely know that there are other stakeholders that want numbers to be able to attach to what they're seeing and feeling and saying, this is not anecdotal, this is data. Anecdotes are different than data. How do we make the data available without violating privacy, without it getting in the way?
That's a great question. I can tell you that right now, administrators meet as a district data once a month. For some of those meetings, we unlock so that administrators can look at data across the district. Any school principal at any time can go in and look at their school for EduClimber. Beyond those two things, and this, which I deliberately chose things that weren't gonna violate any confidentiality, to be determined.
Any other questions?
Yeah, so right now, the work is starting on this strategic plan implementation. So this work is influencing that, I would imagine, correct? Yeah.
It's influencing many different shifts in practice and programs. Yep.
And I'm sorry, Mary Heather and then Ellen.
I'm still formulating my question, so bear with me. I guess I'm a little bit curious, and I don't know if it's possible to do this, particularly at any of our smaller schools. But just like how we're looking at sort of the relative percentage, the proportionality of incidents to, male students or students of a particular race or students at a particular school. I'm wondering, can you do that as well for students on plans?
Yes.
So you could.
You can as long as
it's not identifying.
That gets very difficult. There are a lot of data sets I chose not to show because it was too identifiable. This all depends on humans, right? So if a human has done the thing they're supposed to do, which is enter into PowerSchool what plan a kid is on, EduClimber grabs that information, and so you can use to sort that way and to do analysis.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess that's just an element of data that I would be very interested in knowing.
Yeah.
Particularly if you have a high proportionality, you do wonder if the needs are being sufficiently attended to, and how that's impacting the rest of the learning population. And I guess the other thing that I just wonder as well is, if I'm a teacher in a school where the whole classroom is 25 kids, and there's a disruption, I feel like, and this may just be my own subjectivity, but the impulse or the need to sort of recognize that as a disruption that, impacts a lot of students, as opposed to being a teacher in a small classroom with less kids, where there's some bandwidth to be able to attend to that need without it turning into something documentable. I just wonder, when we're looking at the data and looking at, I wonder if there's a lot of incidents because there's just a lot more students being impacted in some of these classrooms. And the bandwidth is just not even comparable to some of our other classrooms across the district. I'm not sure that there's an answer to it, I'm just,
The
it's a
data brings
wonder,
forth a
I
lot of
guess.
questions. Yeah.
I would say to questions like that, data's great, I love it. It's always gonna be limited. There's other kinds of data, and it's called people and qualitative data. And we could absolutely invite teachers who have taught small classrooms and teachers who have, I think it would be interesting to learn more from teachers about all of that.
Yeah, and
But I'm sorry, that was, I actually, do you mind, or do you wanna keep on this and I'm happy to ask? No, follow up, cause mine's totally, I have a question that's completely
I
unrelated.
guess the thing that I would just wonder, or I'd be interested, if we've got teachers who have experience in both settings.
I mean,
I
the
think
small
that
schools have
anecdotal
big
data-
classes and then small you know what I mean? So there are teachers who will have 18 kids one year and then 6 kids the next year, and they would be able to tell you the differences between knowing that every class is really different, but they have experienced both of those.
Yeah, and I think the other element is the experience of the students entering those classrooms, and that aspect as well. From a socioeconomic perspective as well. So I think it would be most valuable if we have teachers who have taught at Mary Hogan and some of our other locations, and just get anecdotal data about what the experience is like. I think it helps inform.
I actually did have a question though, Barbara, sorry. The wellness and learning centers, you highlight on here too, Nicole, as a space as a challenge. And I'm trying to, just going back a few weeks to when we heard that there was a proposal to open a new wellness and learning center location up in Ripton, where it seems like for whatever reason doesn't really have any numbers to report on these incidents. So can we get more explanation about the Ripton choice over the Mary Hogan? Is that about having more space capacity for more kids to come in if the staffing is there? Or just sort of where the space limitations that you've highlighted in the presentation come into play, and sort of what we're not able to provide for students in certain locations?
Space goes with transportation, they're connected. Ripton came out of Meg Teresnick and I having a conversation, and her feeling passionate that she could build a WLC at Ripton. There is space there, and I think I can make transportation possible from within district, and so it wouldn't be for Ripton students, it would be for district students. In terms of Mary Hogan, I've been to 2 or 3 staff meetings now. I tend to hear that the WLC there feels like movement in the right direction, and if there's a request for additional WLC. Jen and I haven't had a conversation about space. There might be space. And then we have a couple of other schools that might have space. So it's really just about, it's transportation, where's the easiest place to get to, and frankly, staff. So there are 3 incredibly talented staff who all want to work with Meg and help raise this program, and that's unusual. It was very hard to find staff for ACP, and it was moderately hard for the WLC at the first one.
It just took time.
Yeah.
Okay, and next is, Jamie, and then Suzanne.
Oh, Jason.
Okay, and Jason.
What's the plan for Mary Hogan for the rest of this year and next year?
That's a great question.
Is the only thing we're doing the Ripton program for next year, or how are we solving for this year?
I believe we're having that discussion very actively.
Okay.
That's the most I can say right now, I think, but I defer to.
Yeah, we're talking about options and figuring out the best way to go, and maybe it would be better to have it at Mary Hogan and a way to share resources between those two WLCs. But maybe there's advantages to having it at Ripton as well. So we're trying to figure all that out. I don't know that we can do both places. I don't know that we'd have the resources to do that. But we're trying to figure out what to do for next year. As far as this year is concerned, we're just trying to staff the building as best as we can, and have the response coordinator there now. We don't have any other resources to throw at it at the moment.
We do have openings for special educators. We got one applicant.
Suzanne.
So my question was when you showed some of the data and you showed months that it spiked.
Months?
When you showed like a month that it
Yeah.
spiked. So can you then go into that and see, like, was the spike the week right after vacation? Or
No.
right before Martin Luther King Day, or right after Martin Luther King Day?
Have you done that, Tracy? I've
Can you
never
look
gone
at
in
it
and
that
seen
way?
it by week, have you?
I don't think you can see it by
Yeah.
week. Yeah, I think you can go in and see individual incidents, and so you could look at it in that way and to see where there are clusters. I mean, I know we've talked about it anecdotally, as it relates to the fast screening scores, which actually went up in that month. Joanna.
My understanding is the goal is to move students to the least restrictive environment, right?
No, I wouldn't say it that way. I would say the goal is to ensure that students are getting the supports and services they need,
Okay,
as best fits their needs.
okay.
The federal law says you always want to be looking to the least restrictive environment because the law is correcting for decades, if not more, of shunting kids with needs away from.
Okay, and I know the WLC at Mary Hogan is only a year and a half old, but could you talk about, is there a goal for the Wellness and Learning Center in terms of the student outcomes? So the 5 students that participated in the WLC last year, are they still part of that?
Yeah, I can't, because the numbers are so
Yeah.
few and they're identifiable, I can't speak about the particular students. I can say that any student who's receiving that level of support has a very detailed set of goals and objectives and plans that a team of people support them meeting. And I can't, if I spoke about 5 kids or 1 kid of the 5, it would be identifiable.
Okay. So going into building another Wellness and Learning Center, it's this idea that this center is supportive of that student for an extended amount of time? Or is there?
For whatever the extended amount of time is that they need, so each student has an individual plan. So it's what does a kid need, how can we help them, and then if they're doing well in certain areas of the day, they don't need to be in the Wellness and Learning Center. They're in those classes. The Wellness and Learning Center tries to consult with teachers to also help them understand the plans the kids arrive with. And then the goal is for them to make progress such that they no longer need the service.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Any other questions? So this is obviously new information, and I think on a periodic, regular basis, whatever we define would make sense. I think it would be really good to then come back, and we do it at regular increments, right? And as we learn and that kind of thing, I think we'll be able to, see the progress. But obviously, right now, it's
brand new. And, but I, personally, I think, at least we're starting, we're getting the data, we have something to
really focus on, right, and drill down into, refine, so that hopefully we can help these kids.
Barb, we have a quick question.
Yeah.
Do you have any plans at the district level to try to help bring the other schools that are not as ingrained in Power School along, so that we have data that is more, or less, I guess, subjective maybe,
More
across the district?
More
So
consistent.
that we have a more
Yeah.
balanced view of everything happening district-wide.
Absolutely.
And Sophia, you had your hand up before, do you still?
Oh, yeah, it was just a comment, it wasn't a question.
Okay, excellent, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. All right, the next item on the superintendent's report is 5 appointments and 6 resignations. I'd ask that the board approve them en masse as printed.
Okay, can I have a motion to approve the faculty staff appointments and resignations? Jamie?
So moved.
Second.
Steve, thank you. Discussion?
I just have a quick question.
Yes, Joanna?
Are there exit interviews being conducted?
There hadn't been.
Okay.
We're going to be doing
You're
it.
gonna be doing it, okay,
That has not been done in the past.
okay.
Any other, Steve, or Jason?
Any of the paraeducators going to Mary Hogan to try and fill those voids, or?
One of them.
And Chip?
I will make the point that for the board, for those people that haven't been here a long time, we never used to do this, okay? So we weren't, the board per se was never aware of this sort of the flux of in and out for different reasons. So, even though we're a little attuned to some years when it was high, for many, many years, this type of data didn't come to the board to be voted on. Just didn't, I don't know why, but it did. And so the fact that we're seeing it now, and we're seeing it, when we see appointments and resignations, could be all the same over many years. We just don't have that data to be able to reflect on it. So I think that we have to also take that into consideration.
Could be worse.
Any,
Yeah.
any other discussion? So with the exit interviews, once we have some information, or you have some information, I think the board would be interested in just highlights from that if possible.
We would have to do that in executive session.
And, okay, yeah, definitely. Okay. So all those in favor of approving the faculty, staff appointments and resignations, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by saying nay? Any abstentions? Yep. Okay, one abstention.
Two, actually.
Oh, two, I'm so sorry. Thank you. And so they've been approved.
Thank you. And the third item is bank account resolution and invoice payment authorization.
Yeah, exciting stuff. This is
Essential.
a standard resolution that the board grants every year to formally empower the superintendent and administration the ability to spend money. And so we have two resolutions here. I'll read through the fine print. First, the memo. So the authorizations are produced annually to grant standard banking powers to fiscal officers throughout the district. And B, to define and grant authorization powers to members of the board to act on director's orders. The first outlines signature authority for each ACSD bank account and authorizes the business manager and superintendent to notify the bank of changes in persons occupying the authorized positions, as well as other standard language provided by the National Bank of Middlebury. The second is an effort to comply with Vermont statutes regarding board approval for invoice payments. To be compliant, we are required to have a predictable invoice payment schedule and to improve internal controls to meet accounting standards. Therefore, school boards are asked annually to approve the following. First, authorize the superintendent of schools and his or her designee to authorize payment of invoices and payroll as needed, following a monthly summary of payments reviewed and signed by the ACSD board chair. Second, request distribution of ACSD financial reports to the ACSD executive committee of the board. So for the first resolution, I would make the recommendation that the board adopt the following resolution. That the board of directors authorize the following board members to review, authorize payment, and sign director's orders as needed when the school board does not meet on a regularly scheduled invoice payment approval date. In addition, the board shall authorize the treasurer to sign checks for necessary and urgent school payments as recommended by the ACSD Director of Finance and Operations or Superintendent of Schools between regularly scheduled invoice payment dates. The Board of Directors will ratify the approval of necessary payments at their next regularly, that's what we're doing right now. And so that's the first resolution. Second resolution grants the following powers for the superintendent, director of finance and operations, and assistant business manager to open or close deposit or share accounts in the name of the organization, endorse checks and orders for payment or otherwise withdraw or transfer funds on deposit, borrow money on behalf of the organization, enter into a written lease for the purpose of renting, maintaining, accessing, and terminating a safe deposit box, execute various bank agreements, wire transfer agreements, ACH agreements, night depository agreements, and merchant processing agreements. Sign, execute, and deliver documents as needed for the above items, inquire about balances and accounts, and provide financial institution with names of persons occupying positions for signature changes. And then we have a list of accounts with the authorized signers. So I would ask for the board to approve those two resolutions.
So, on the first one, Matt, there's a choice that we have. Do we need to define that at the same time? Whether or not it's an and, two board members, an or any two board members? You have to do it one way or the other. I'm sorry?
You could get one way or the other.
Yeah, that's what so as we're doing the resolution.
It was I thought, and I could be wrong, that it was up to the chair to make that choice, but.
Wow, I have power.
Yeah.
Is that true? Is that?
It's the board.
I would think it would be the board, but go ahead, Chip.
I think the board in the past has acted in the third realm, just to give us flexibility. It's true, it's been pretty consistent over the last few years here that me and other people have read the bills. It's just because you don't have to go out and keep finding people, but we have had times when we've struggled to have somebody do it all the time. So to have at least any two board members makes total sense, even though it may be consistent over time.
Right. That's what I would assume. Right. So it seems to me, unless I hear otherwise, that when we make this resolution, that we should then designate any two board members and do it all in one. And that was my point.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So let's do this one first. And can I have a motion to, and do we have to read the whole thing? For the first resolution, which really authorizes the following board members to review, authorize payment, and sign director's orders as needed, so on and so forth. And it would be for any two board members to do that. Is there any a motion here?
I'll make that.
How about a second?
I'll second.
Okay, I saw Jamie's hand, I heard Suzanne's, so, yeah.
It was Chip.
Well, Chip, and then Jamie also raised his hand for the second. Any further discussion? Okay, All those in favor of adopting the first board resolution that authorizes the board of directors, authorizes the following board members to review, authorize payment, and sign director's orders as needed when the school board does not meet on a regularly scheduled invoice payment approval date, in addition to, and I'm not gonna read the whole thing, if that's okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? Okay, so the first resolution has been approved.
One more question on the first resolution is, would the board like every member to
thank
receive
you.
an audit report, or just the finance committee? The copy of the board should.
So what's folks' preferences? Do you see where Matt is alluding to at the bottom here? I mean,
I think,
If
if I may, that
Yes.
this might harken back to a age of printed audit reports, and it
and now
might
they're
be easier
electronic, just email them
to have it
and,
available as a PDF.
exactly.
Make it available.
Yeah, so my thinking is information is good, and why wouldn't, we just send it to everyone, and so that everyone has it? So is everyone okay with that part of the resolution? I don't think we need to re-vote on this, but it's just defining that. And on here, there's a signature, it's, the board signs it, and another ACSD board officer, so, I guess it's, okay. Yeah, and so who's the other person that, it would be either the vice chair or the,
Yeah, it just
So-
makes sense to have the chair and vice chair.
yeah, that's what I was gonna suggest.
Send it down to Suzanne.
Okay. Excellent. Are we ready now for the second resolution in this particular case? So, identifying superintendent / director of finance and operations / assistant business manager, open or close deposit or shared accounts in the name of the organization, endorsed checks and orders for payment or otherwise withdraw or transfer funds on deposit, borrow money on behalf of the organization, enter into a written lease for the purposes of renting, maintaining, accessing, and terminating a safe deposit box, execute various bank agreements, wire transfer agreements, ACH agreements, night depository agreements, and merchant processing agreements, sign, execute, and deliver documents as needed for the above items, inquire about balances and accounts, and provide financial institution with names of persons occupying positions for a signature change. And in this particular case, we just need to sign this, correct? And so I guess I'd have a motion for us to adopt this.
So moved.
A second? Second. All those in, any discussion?
So if this is effective tonight,
Yeah.
the superintendent is Wendy Baker, who doesn't actually start until July 1, which means Tim can't do anything.
I think that historically,
We would need, historically, Peter's been continuing, so it's always been Peter, but I wonder if we need to redo this
so,
in July when Dr.
so what I
Baker
did, was I left, this is the resolution. The list is a, extra page that was added to sort of have the roster for next year, but the main resolution just lists positions, it doesn't list names. Working with our auditors this year, they wanted to see an accompanying list of names, and so that for next year, that's why that third page was added.
So it's just whoever holds that office.
So that when they're reading this, they have a reference to who is holding that.
I guess I just wonder, because it says that the resolution of the document is a correct copy of the resolution adopted at a meeting of the organization duly and properly called and held on March 25th, 24. these resolutions appear in the minutes of the meeting and have been rescinded and have not been rescinded or modified. So if we have that list in the minutes, it effectively removes our interim superintendent from the list.
I don't think so, Susan, because the resolution itself, it's like a legal document and it doesn't list anyone by name, it lists them by title. So whoever holds the title is who that would hold that authority. Matt added a list that's like an addendum, but that doesn't attach to the legal contract of sorts that the resolution actually is.
But it's in our board minutes. Because it's in board pack, so therefore it's in part of the minutes.
Okay.
So
But does
that's
that
why
change the
that's why I'm
contract?
saying in other instances, if you have an interim superintendent, you can amend this once you have your full-time superintendent on board as of their
But I don't think we would need to amend it.
Just like TBD, to be determined in Bridgeport.
Yeah.
Right.
It's
And if there's
it's not.
turnover, you know, if
It's
there's
by
a
position.
principal in any of these schools that's not the person listed here, I don't think we would need to revote on this.
But we're
Right.
adopting the resolution which has no names in it.
Right.
So I don't think that,
Which is this
It's just-
piece of paper.
yeah, we're not adopting,
What I'm,
we're not adopting the list of names, we're
Right.
adopting the resolution.
what I need to sign, right, is just the position.
Yes.
Yeah.
What you could do is strike page 3 from the minutes.
I would do that,
The list of names struck from the minutes would fix the problem that you're
right.
highlighting. If Mary Heather can do that.
Okay. Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor of adopting the second resolution, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by nay? Any abstentions? Okay, it's been approved, and I will quickly sign it.
And that concludes the superintendent's report.
Okay, great, thank you. Getting organized again. Next is the report of the chair. And what I would like to do is hand out our code of ethics. Whoops, I need one. I need to sign one as well. And if you could do me a favor, Matt, and just bring this up. It'd be great. So this is something that we have to do on an annual basis. There should be enough for everybody. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And so in looking at this, what I'd like to be able to do at times is use this as kind of board development and training as well. So in this particular case, what I'm highlighting here is the code of ethics. And if you look at it, it's pretty much dovetails with our governance role. And so I just wanted to use this as a kind of a learning moment to just remind us, you know, what we're signing, what we're here for, the scope of our responsibilities, the level of ethical standards that we must withhold as individuals, as well as respect of our peers, our constituents, and confidentiality considerations across the board. So this is just like a reminder that this is what we are adhering to and agreeing to as a board of representatives. So I'm not gonna go through every item on here, but it has everything from identifying and recognizing what our role is, our responsibility and role is. So it's important for us to try to the best of our ability, understand that. It's all really board development, right, that we need to do, in addition to not only the ethics behind not receiving anything of value, and which is probably a little bit more straightforward, as well as that third area, which is, respect of peers, constituents, and confidentiality considerations. Make everything from executive sessions, keeping things confidential, as well as attending regularly scheduled meetings as insofar as possible, right? So I just thought there was some really good information in here, and it was worth taking a little bit of time for us to reflect on this a little bit as we're signing it, as kind of a board development kind of thing, and making those kind of integrated with things that we do, I thought might be a good idea as we go forward. Any questions on this at all? So if everyone could sign this tonight, that would be awesome, because we're all here. And then it will be done, and we can file it. And you can just, make sure I get a copy before we leave. Okay. Moving forward, we have the board, I would like to give you a board retreat update. There hasn't been a lot of discussion on the board retreat at this point, but I have spent some time, talking with Dr. Baker, who will participate in the board retreat, and based on things that are going on right now with the strategic plan implementation, I threw out to her, when do you think would be a good time for us to have a board retreat? And she was hoping it is a little bit later as opposed to, say, next month or whatever, so that more time is spent within the implementation of the strategic plan to get it a little bit further, the meetings that are happening, that kind of thing, so more information can be brought back to us. So looking at the calendar, the date that kind of jumped out was June 1st, which is a Saturday. And so the important thing of bringing it up is it is a Saturday, and hopefully it's far enough out that if folks have conflicts, they might be able to rework it, because it's really, I think, going to be essential that we all are able to attend the board retreat. Go ahead.
I just was wondering, and I can check real quick, but what's the date of graduation?
It's at least a week or two after
it?
that.
Yeah.
It's the 8th, I think, or
Just
the,
wanted
It
to-
certainly won't be.
it's not the 1st.
No, I know it's not that early.
All right, good.
It's not the 1st. And I meant to actually look at that before I came, but I forgot to.
Just came up.
Yes, I know.
Okay.
So, and my gut at this point is thinking that it's going to be a 3/4 of a day, probably would start in the morning and go into mid-afternoon or so. I mean, there's got to be a lot of work to build out the content, but what I'm kind of envisioning, there would be some aspect of it that's board development, and then there would be, working on and learning about the strategic plan implementation and possibly the role that we may play as advisory, having a couple people be advisory to that work that's being done. And then it's really looking at also our committees, including facilities, and coming away from that with really what is specific work that we want to happen in various committees, right? And really formalize that as a group. So everyone learns about it, and then we can talk about it, and as a board, formalize that. But that's just, at this point in time, kind of the concept that I've been thinking about. And then, obviously, the work that's happening, tying it in and being able to tie it in with the strategic plan implementation work as well, as everything needs to happen. So, any questions before I keep talking? Mary Heather.
Were you planning to engage like a moderator or somebody to do that, like somebody from the ACSD?
And it's too soon to, probably, right? Most likely. But we haven't got that far yet. Yeah.
Okay.
And the main purpose for tonight is to make sure that people have it on their calendar, and hopefully it's far enough out that, most people if not everyone will be able to attend, because it's so important. The other thing that I was thinking about as I was prepping for this meeting, we want to spend some time on board development. As folks that were here last year, a lot of that was around governance, right? There's obviously a whole lot more that we could do. So I was thinking it might be advantageous if, I put together kind of a Google form and worked with the executive committee to kind of flesh that out so people could help to identify priorities. Because, the session isn't going to be all professional development. We also want to be able to cover this other very important work, which will kind of drive us for the rest of the year. So, but at the same time, the time we do spend on professional development, I want to make sure it's something that is really the highest priority in folks' mind, right? So what if folks think about that? If, we did put together, and this is just a brainstorm I have right now, so I don't know what it looks like yet, but like a Google form that would allow you to weigh in, maybe identify some of the concepts that we have in governance core and the school board association, really to help drive and prioritize where should we spend our precious time on that particular day to help us grow. And so I thought that might be a worthwhile thing to do instead of, me just kind of like figuring out, oh, I think we should work on this, and get folks' input. Awesome. So I will start to think about that and, try to get something out so that it's had plenty of time, to be vetted by the executive committee to help flesh it out, as well as give you time to respond, to influence what we have. And by then, that would then also help to define how much time really do we need to spend on that versus the rest of the work. Okay, any questions?
Just a comment.
Yeah.
I think when you do send out the Google form, if you could just provide a deadline for
Oh,
folks to
definitely.
respond by.
Yeah, definitely. And and even, the creation of it, I look forward to having the executive committee help me, making sure it makes sense and captures what we need. The other thing I wanted to just mention as we are, as part of the report of the chair, over the last week or so, I've been going through listening to the legislative testimony that's been happening in the up in Mount Pillier. And I really strongly recommend that people take time. I know Dr. Williams included links of that in the report on Saturday, or on Friday's report, because I think it's hearing what other school districts are saying and the pain points that they're experiencing is really important for us, but also some of the ideas people are throwing out for solution. Part of my concern is that we may have a solution, but it's not going to necessarily get to the root cause of the problems, and we'll be right back to where we are. One example is having single high school across the whole county, for example. So I think it's important for us as a district to be understanding what's there and thinking about it, and maybe we want to, as a district, to provide, weigh in, or at the minimum, individuals can definitely weigh in, giving feedback to our legislators. And so I think this is like such a crucial time right now, and being a little bit in, at least providing feedback and input, I think is very important, especially for a district that, actually had its budget passed, right? We worked really hard on that, and I just think our point of view is very crucial as well, and making sure that we're really getting to the root cause of the problems of why educational spending is going up that we experienced this year, and all the analysis that we had done. So anyway, enough said there. Following this is a report of the board and committee assignments. So on Friday, folks received an email from me that has this year's committee assignments. I had actually reached out to most folks one-on-one as well to let them know before just sending out the entire assignment. One of the things that I want to really stress is that the executive committee really had a methodology of trying to make sure that each committee was represented by, Middlebury as well as rural students, that committees had a mix of more senior board members to help, the newer members to make the committees as effective as possible. And I know that not everyone got their first choice in all cases. And, when you didn't, it was really important, that maybe you were serving on another committee to really help, right? That committee out for your leadership and knowledge is needed there. Next, each committee needs to meet to finish the reorganization, which is to elect a chair. And I identified point persons to do that in the email that I sent out. And so now that you know the committee, member makeup, you can work with those folks to find a good time to meet. And just as some, for some of the newer folks, as a reminder, per open meeting law, meetings should be warned at least 48 hours in advance and draft minutes created and available to the public within 5 business days. Just reiterating that.
I
Yes.
didn't get that email on Friday.
You didn't get it? You're not on the list. Because I
took it off ACSD.
I sent it
Not
to,
off the ACSD website. So,
huh?
did you just go off the website?
No, I actually used the actual,
ACSD group,
the
which
group.
hasn't been updated yet.
Oh, I am so sorry. I will send that to you tonight immediately. But I told you what group you were on.
Yes,
so-
I know that. It's everything.
Yes, I am so sorry. I assume those were updated. I
It was a
apologize.
safe assumption, but it was wrong.
Yes, not good.
Yeah, Jim
Um,
sent it too. Thank you.
So at the first meeting, each committee, what I would like the committees to do is to take a look at the charge, the responsibilities of that committee for the ACSD website, and then start to think about what the work plan would be for the year. What I would love to be able to do is, one of the things that we need to do as a board is to form the work plan for the upcoming year. And it would be really great to be able to factor in, basic input and things that the board is going to need to be responding to, commenting on, whatever, as part of the work plan, right? So it would really help in the formation of that work plan to have folks start to look at, for their particular committee, what is the work plan that, the work that should be the emphasis. In some cases, it is a little more straightforward, like on Finance Committee, right, Chip? One thing, though, for the Finance Committee that I would suggest, though, that we should look at is how do we, going forward, give better parameters around ahead of time before budget development to give to the administration prior to them developing a budget instead of kind of evolving. For example, this year, we did finally make a decision that we weren't to exceed the 10% and that we would end up at 9.9 spending per equalized pupil. It would have been good for our team here to have that information ahead of time. So we're charged, if you look at the School Board Association, the training, part of our responsibility as a board is to give parameters around how the budget is to be developed. and they're high-level kinds of parameters, but it avoids rework. And it allows us, and you know, obviously this isn't done in a vacuum, it's being done in the committee with our administrative partners, right? So that it's not a surprise, but then those parameters should be something that's brought back to the full board to agree to, right? So that would say is some work that we could do sooner and start to think about it, as opposed to waiting until later in the year. You know, how would we even go about setting these parameters and having some discussion around it? Okay. So I think, and the work, and really the work that each individual committee is doing, because it is the work of the board and it's being done on behalf of the board, I would love to be able to have committees come back to the full board and say, this is what we're doing in the facilities committee, this is what we believe are the most important things for us to be focused on, you know, communications and engagement, what have you, and bring it back and get input from the rest of the board and buy-in, basically. The other, last but not least, is there is the governance legislation that I keep harping on, that we need to be looking at, and I'm going to send that out again to everyone. And as we're meeting as committees and kind of thinking through this work, taking a look at this legislation and thinking about, well, what part of this could we carve out and put a plan in place to be able to adhere to. I'm not proposing, you know, that we like do everything right off the bat, but what parts of this legislation do we want to start focusing on, which will make us a more effective board, right? So everything from, you know, communications to other aspects as well. So I will resend that out to everyone, that email. I had summarized the legislation a while ago and had included it in a board pack, but I'll just send an email out again so that folks have that. Any questions? Make sense? Excellent. So that's what I had.
Can I just make one comment on finance, because you use that as an example. We used to do that, okay, a long time ago. We would set parameters as far as increase in budget of percent. As this system has evolved to become inherently so complicated, it gets a little harder to make those kinds of parameters in that simplistic way. So in defense of why we may not have done it last year, the whole landscape was changing a lot. And Matt having to respond to it in lots of ways and then bring it back to us. So I just want to make sure that we, it's not so simple.
Oh, I know,
okay?
I know, but looking forward, we had a $50 million budget. And, you know, I think we do need to start to think through, well, next year, are we going to be flat? Are we, you know, are we going to go down?
Those are okay. I just want to make sure that
But,
these,
you know,
the
even at
parameters of percentage increase.
No,
and
no,
all
I
that
wouldn't
is
say
really
percentage.
different.
I'm happy not to go to percentages at this point, but I think we have to have a philosophy that we adopt, you know, in relationship from a higher level perspective. You know, what are we going to do with next year's budget? So, you know, if in fact, for example, we decide, well, we're going to, you know, reduce the budget by a certain amount, and then, you know, the folks need to know that right away.
That'd be helpful.
It would be very helpful, right? So they could be thinking, or if we're going to try to keep it flat, for example, or we're going to increase it by a certain percentage. And I think, you know, our responsibility is, at least at that level, is to be able to direct our administrative, you know, folks, the superintendent and his team of that, instead of having it happen, you know, as we go, after we see the first set of numbers. Okay? So there is a little bit, you know, all the committees have a little bit to do. Okay, so that is all that I had. Any other questions, thoughts? So next up on the agenda is our area, the time on the agenda where we invite the public to comment on any particular topic. And I believe we have several folks attending the board meeting this evening who would like to shine a light on neurodiversity, and I welcome your presence. And I look forward to listening and learning from you on this topic or any other topic that someone wants to bring forward. So if you could limit your, once again, broken record here, if you could limit your comments to 3 minutes, that would be awesome. And if you're in the room, raise your hand, or if you're on Zoom, raise your Zoom hand. Okay, so starting in the room. Okay, go ahead. And
Hi.
state your name.
Mary Slozar. I had intended to introduce myself as the co-chair of the CPAC, and I looked forward to sharing with the school board the many wonderful things that happened in our schools because of our principals and our teachers who made it happen. I don't feel able to do that right now because I have burning feelings inside of me after listening to the student services presentation. So I'm going to set that aside, and I'm sorry to my other CPAC folks who are here. There are some in the room, and there are others on here. But in the wake of Neurodiversity Celebration Week, to hear our school district reinforce this mindset that our children with disabilities are lagging skills is beyond me. My autistic daughter is not lagging a single skill. She has different needs. Challenging behavior is not unmet lagging skills, it's unmet needs. And it's a completely different mindset. And there are so many children in Mary Hogan that have unmet needs, and it's not because of the teachers, it's because they've come with disabilities. They've come with trauma. They've come with all sorts of things. And those things are not changed by teaching them to look someone in the eye or to say please and thank you when whatever it's required of them in the compliant environment. So I just feel it's so important, particularly in the wake of neurodiversity. We're not saying, let's be okay with people lagging skills. We're saying, let's be okay with everyone being different. And if this school district and other school districts were to start moving forward in what is required from Act 173 in creating universally designed learning environments, needs would be met. In an ideal world where we have universally designed learning, it is an environment where everyone can come with their own needs and have their needs met and learn and thrive and not have the challenging behaviors. I've never sat in this room and cried, and I cried tonight. So, it's just incredibly important. It's incredibly linked to what we all tried to celebrate last week. Thank you.
Okay, others online or in the room? Okay. And can you scroll down just to make sure we're not?
Barb, can I make it? I don't understand why we have this public comment at the end. I understand in theory, if we had 30 people speaking every meeting on a wide range of topics that were off agenda, maybe that would really mess up our timing. Except I actually think what we hear from the public should be first. And there are people in the room who want to speak to us. They are leaving their families behind to do that. Making people sit through 2 hours, if they want to, great. It's a solution without a problem. We had no public comments at the beginning on the agenda topics, which means everyone who wanted to speak could have spoken, and we would have not had to make people sit through it. So
And go home. Just point out.
yeah, and
They
people
left.
have to go home. So it feels like an innovation that we implemented. I don't know why, because it doesn't feel like we have so many board meetings where there's,
Point of order, is this the right time and format to be bringing this up? Because
I'm done, Steve.
Okay.
I mean, we have a policy on it, and so it's, and we just recently passed that policy as a board. And so at this point, we're following the policy.
Great.
Okay. Any other comments? Well, thank you. And seeing none, I think then I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
A second? Thank you.
I am.